guys, welcome to Manch Talk. I'm Carla Gericke.
And I'm Brittany Ping.
That is Miss Brittany, as you can see. Tammy is not with us today. She had some allergies, so she let me know this morning, and I was like, fine, we can wing this. I'm in the chair seat, and I got my co-chair lady here with me. So, Brittany, I know, I've known you for many years now.
I've been here for 9 years in the States, and I think, or in this state, and I think I met you when I moved, yeah.
Yep, and so we both live on the west side of Manchester. We know each other also from, the Free State Project, but we know each other really from also Manchester politics.
Yeah.
So, Brittany's a mom of two fabulous children.
They're wonderful, 6 and 5.
And you are now the president emeritus of the Manchester Republican Committee, correct?
Correct. So I'm still sitting on the board, but last year I was the chair, and now I serve basically at the pleasure of the chair, whatever they need.
So you get all the dirty work.
No, actually Will has been really excellent to me. We did have a little bit of difference when Will had to step aside because he was in the primary for the primary election. So I did have to step it up a little bit there and assist Lisa, who was our vice chair. And we got through that few weeks just fine. And now we're just prepping for the general.
And in fact, unless I saw you on Saturday at the Health Freedom Rally, there were so many people that I can't recall who I saw and who I didn't see, and we'll talk about that in a sec. The last time I saw you was last Friday at the Recount.
I was like, I don't know where I've been. My life is insane. But yes, we were at the Recount together for 5 hours.
Right. So that was Friday morning. For folks back home, basically what happened was, the city elections are nonpartisan, which means it's not really the parties. And so people have to be, people on the committees and that kind of stuff with the bylaws, they have to be a little careful about how they get involved, right? But we had we had an election. It was between Rich Girard, Victoria Sullivan, and Joyce Craig. Joyce was the winner, and then there was about I think it was like 130 something spread between Victoria, who of course came second and will be coming first soon, and Rich. And Rich, for some reason, I guess it's within his rights to do, but the gap was pretty big. So for me, it felt like, Friday morning, we all went. It's at the Carol Ryan Center. There were about 70 people for 5 hours. That's a lot of resources. It cost the city, I think, between $3,000 and $4,000.
Yeah, I don't know exactly. So It was outside of the city allows a specific margin of error in which they will fund a recount if it's requested. Oh. So in the mayoral race, it's 1%. So it was above the 1%. 1%, it was like 1.28 or something. So Rich did have to fund a part of this recount.
Okay.
I don't know exactly that. So I do know that there is a percentage at which the city will fund it all. Just because it's a margin of error. And then it was past that threshold.
And so recounts are important, having now been involved in several, one of my own, and I've, gone and volunteered at a few, because election integrity matters, right? That's just kind of one of the issues we're seeing bubbling up the whole time. Whether you're pro-Trump or anti-Trump, we do know that there have been like some weird things that have happened. And one of the shocking things I've seen on Twitter is people who will say, well, yeah, there's fraud, but it's not widespread. And I'm like, how bad does it have to be before we kind of care?
I think I was talking to so I have been a little bit more of a provocateur than my usual. I'm a middle child, and so I don't like conflict. I know that I call socially tolerant. I don't use liberal to describe myself anymore. I'm socially tolerant,
yep.
And I'm fiscally conservative.
Yep.
And those are scary things to people together, and they don't understand, and that's fine, and I don't want to rock their boats.
Right.
Trying to understand how you can be both. Especially because my personal Facebook isn't politically driven. It's people I went to engineering school with, or business school,
yep.
or college, my graduate degree, or high school even, or family. And so I posted about this vax mandate when Biden pushed it down. Employment law is I'm a nerd. My background's human resources. I love employment law. I'm a small business owner, so OSHA is still a thing that's very much on my radar. And I was like, I can't. I thought, like, okay, we've been taught this anti-vax crowd is this radical wing, and then the Biden administration was like, it's 47% of the American people. And I was like, that's not a radical wing. 47% is not a radical wing.
No, and
of
it's
people.
Also, it's not, I don't know how we got on this topic.
I can see, here's this segue. So,
okay.
So a friend of mine from engineering school, so this is, very much like science, science rules, which 100% science. Okay. We're on the same page. And he said, how do you think this is going to go with election issues? People, and he brought this up to me because I kind of opened the box to him. Oh, how do you feel about this? And I said, here's the thing. If you don't take advantage of the transparent opportunities there are in elections in your town before there becomes an issue, you're not going to understand what the actual fraud issues are.
Right.
You buy into the mainstream or the counter mainstream narratives of what the fraud is. And being able to see 9,000 ballots on Friday, anybody who's like, there's widespread fraud, were they there taking advantage of the opportunity to actually view 9,000 ballots? And so I was telling Ben on this Facebook conversation, I said, listen, I do believe that there are people that make mistakes, right? You'll find that elections are run by lay people and volunteers. I sat with Ward 10s. Yep. I loved them. Oh my gosh, you're amazing. I don't know if you're watching this, but it was fantastic working with you. I sat with him for the 500 ballots that we counted together. These are lay people. These are volunteers mostly. This is you and me saying, I think this is important and I want to spend my time, or I put my name up on the ballot for selectmen and I'm going to be responsible for the checking in of people and distribution of ballots in my wards. And I do think that there are people that make honest mistakes or that don't necessarily understand and read. And my understanding is actually the city clerks are performing some sort of testing or additional training requirement this year just to confirm that some of these lapses, because of the large turnover and people who were running these little selectman positions or clerk or moderator positions, actually get the training that they need or additional training because of the additional scrutiny.
Right, but I think that the additional scrutiny is important. Maybe we've all gotten a little cavalier about how it works, and so it's checks and balances. And so it's not even accusatory, right? It's just sort of like, oh, how does this work? Like even in my own recount, right? I was never like, oh, I think someone's doing me in. I was more like, well, that's weird. We know for a fact that people wrote it in and that there's a discrepancy. So what happened? And it was as simple as someone wrote something wrong on a spreadsheet and the spreadsheet ended up going, to the city and from there, right? So as long as there's still this process to correct the wrongs, I'm okay with it. And I agree with Britt that, if you're sitting at home and you're kind of like, well, I think all these bad things are happening, come help, come see for yourself. We were 70 people in that room. You could see the boxes, you could see how it worked. You sort of familiarize yourself with the process. I mean, I think as we're the young guard, in terms of the the sort of up and coming people in the city, and so we want to make sure that we know how it is working so that we can be those checks and balances.
And you actually said something at the recount that resonated with me as well. You said, if the most that they're asking of me is to show up, when did that become too much?
Yeah, I mean, honestly,
like when did that? But it's very true, because the opportunity to be a part of that recount or be an observer to the recount was available to every person in Manchester. And there are way more vocal people than 70 that are saying, hey, we need to look at these ballots. I want to see these ballots. I want to understand how people vote. And doing the state, I sat in on 4 recounts for state rep races last year as the chair. And then I was there for this recount for the whole city. And it's totally different. First off, it's so interesting to see how people vote. People do not vote the way that you think people vote.
No.
You think you vote because if you, the way you believe, and other people who you believe the way you do vote the same way. They don't. There are very few of the same voting patterns. Now, of course, I watched 500 of them, and I wasn't documenting each of them individually, but people don't vote the way that you think they vote. And the best way for anyone who's concerned about election integrity, because they say, I know that people voted, is to do what you did and say, I know that people did this. Let's do a recount. And same thing with Rich. Rich had that same, Rich Gerard had that same opportunity. I think that the people did vote. I think that we lost these votes based on the absentees. And obviously, we did find we found votes for every single candidate. So there were votes that weren't
also
counted.
like minuscule. I think between
19?
Rich and Victoria, yeah. I mean, the
19
list
total
I
votes.
saw was like he gained 3 and she gained 2, and I think those were specific tables, so it kind of differed. But I think that's a really, really good point in terms of individualism, in the sense that people don't vote like you would expect them to, right? They jump across party lines. I saw all kinds of stuff. And that's actually really important for the message that I carry, and which I believe to some extent you carry as well, right? That, we're all unique, we're all different. And my example is always, if you're on an airplane with the TVs that are on the back of the seats, right? And you're at the back, say, waiting for the loo, and you look down the aisle of the airplane. I was amazed last time. There's no one that I could see on that airplane was watching the same show. And I was like, we're trying to create this world where we're like, we're all the same and we must all lockstep, goose step in this one direction. And it's like, that's so counter to how we are as human beings. Like everyone is just like, nah, I kind of want to do this little thing this little different way. Shifting gears.
Okay.
You're running for office, correct?
I am running for the Ward 11 Board of School Committee position.
Okay, what does that entail?
So what does it entail? It entails representing the constituents of Ward 11 in regards to anything with the school board. So the school board is there to act in the best interest of the students in regards to the Manchester School District. So it's just a little bit of everything. It's curriculum, it's student safety, it's accountability to the learning metrics and things like that. It's facilities planning and development. It's really encompassing of everything that
Were you
has to do.
surprised about the charter school thing that happened? So just for folks back home, as a reminder, every 10 years we're supposed to rewrite the Manchester City school charter. There were shenanigans in terms of like trying to change things. Basically, I mean, the long and the short of it, the shortest version is there are special interests that are trying to take the school board's budget, the school budget, which is half of Manchester's budget, out from under the tax cap, so that we would probably, I don't know, I'm willing to bet anyone back home $100 that once it's out from under the tax cap, I don't know, spending's going to go up, right? So what happened in this primary election, which has never happened before, is it was just the question of should we, in November, vote on whether this step, moving it from the tax cap, happens. And people were just like, we're just voting no! And I think that's a big win for liberty and for fiscal responsibility.
So it's actually, they're two separate things. So the one that we voted on in the primary election, so September 21st, your ballot said, do you vote to allow us to open a study for the charter? So that's a generic question that has to be put on the ballot every 10 years. We hit 10 years. So we could have changed anything in the charter. It would have opened a new commission. So a year ago, 2 years ago, we voted to create a special charter commission specifically for the school district. That whole fiasco disaster from Pat Long's state bill that required that question to go on, that required to create the 9-person commission, that made its whole recommendation. And then the state said, that's not what you can do. And so then we made a thing saying, I don't even remember what that question was. The answer was no, but the city overwhelmingly said yes. And then this one in the primary is a non sequitur to those two things.
Right.
So it was going to happen no matter what. But this voter fatigue came out, 100%. Voter fatigue, I think, is what it can be attributed to, where they were like, no, stop. We voted yes on the last two things and nothing happened. This is my opinion.
Right.
We voted yes on the last two things, thinking this is what you were promising us, and nothing.
No.
So now, so then this is the last piece. So then the aldermen, they were forced by Joe Kelly Lavasser, thank you, to put it to a vote with the aldermen to put this next question about the school taxing authority. And it was the question about the school taxing authority. It was in 4 parts, and they made the board of mayor and aldermen put the vote on it, and it failed. So it will not be on our ballot.
Yep.
But John DePietro wrote an op-ed today in the Union Leader, and it's the Michael Myers. We can only kill this so many times. It's going to come back. And the them that exists are saying the school taxing authority would of course be part of the tax cap because it's part of Manchester.
No, they're lying.
But they're lying because 2 years ago they said this isn't about school autonomy. This isn't about budget autonomy.
No, and honestly, I mean, you can tell the tells from the Union Leader just how it's phrased, right? Like one of my favorite projects is to watch how language changes over time so that you can see how propaganda or messaging or the narrative is sort of toned in some ways. And honestly, the last article I saw in the Union Leader was people saying, oh yeah, we were trying to get taxing authority and I guess that failed, right? And so there was this honest tell where people were like, yeah. So I think it's partly, I see it as a strength for sort of more fiscally responsible people. I think it was a win for the city because one of the things that I find troubling, and so, it'd be great if you got on the school board or the school commission, is this notion that they said, well, we have dropped our enrollment. And so, we have several studies that have come out over the last 2 years saying, well, enrollment's down, I think at the time it was 25%, but then we know over the last year we've lost another 30% to homeschooling because people, one, sort of realized, oh, wait a second, is this how my kids are being taught? And is this what my kids are being taught? I think there's a level of frustration amongst parents in general, just, and then I think the third thing in that whole charter soup no was just everyone got their revels and we were all like, what? No, I'm sorry. I think Joyce Craig called us non-essential for like 18 months. So I'm like, how non-essential am I if you just want to tax me more and more and more?
Yeah, it's definitely an experience of watching. I love that you've got like the lawyer and the creative writing like piece of watching language change, and ultimately, the financially responsible or fiscal conservatives have not changed our tune. You cannot, I ran 2 years ago for school committee. My background's human resources. My background is all of it from creating job descriptions, lining them up with SOC codes, going all the way up to like an affirmative action plan management. So I have the experience in regards to what should people be paid, how should it happen. I don't have union experience, don't get me wrong, but the idea at that point was we needed to negotiate contracts. That was the most important. It had been delayed for so long. The teachers deserved a contract and the taxpayers deserved to have a responsible contract in place. And that immediately did not happen.
Didn't they do a secret vote like within the first month of the lockdown where it was just this like weird backdoor thing where I was like, where was the public meeting for that? Now, honestly, I do miss some of that stuff. It's hard to stay on top of all the statism because there's a lot of it. But I remember, I stand to be corrected. So if I'm wrong, someone will let me know. But I think it was like this backdoor secret little contract negotiation that happened in 2020 that I don't remember there being a public meeting about the actual teacher's contract that was ratified.
Yeah, I know that there was some like special
accommodation.
Something was like in the heat of the day. Like, we have to do this.
Look how polite Brittany is. I'm like, it sounds to me like sneaky shenanigans
it's the middle
are
child.
happening.
I don't like to rock the boat. And especially when I'm not very confident and saying like this date, this time, this happened, this time. But yes, but I kind of feel like, I don't want to say we're over and done and past that, because we're not. You know, the next contract, I heard something the other day, one contract negotiation for the unions, that ceiling becomes the floor. And I think that's a horrible mentality. First off, if you're someone that's dependent upon a contract, to view and to look at someone and say their grass is green, mine can be greener. I think that's a damaging
what I would love
way to
see?
look at it.
I would actually like to see teachers advocate more for themselves, especially the exceptional teachers. I mean, I think a lot of them may, depending on, what the next 5 years looks like, are probably going to start to drop out of professional schooling and maybe become private tutors. I've actually seen a fair amount of that. I've seen teachers saying, oh, this last year kind of gave me a sense of what I can and can't do. I know there's one teacher who has 5 families who have said, we'll hire you to tutor our children. They're using the education freedom accounts, right? So there's this like $5,000-ish that is following the child. So let's say teacher can have the 5 students plus the 5,000 per, so you're getting $25,000 to tutor, and then you can like do it from home. You can do all these things, right?
And it's a much more tailored educational plan.
That, and also a lot more flexibility. So maybe that doesn't sound like a lot, but maybe you go up to 10, or maybe you're like, this is my mad money, and this is what we use for vacations or diapers or like whatever it is, right? And so I'm hoping we'll see more of that flexibility. But what I also want to see is I want the issue I have with unions and collective bargaining and that kind of stuff is it protects the underperformers at the expense of the exceptional. And everyone who knows me or who's watched the show knows I have a growth mindset, right? Like I'm like, how you're here, how do you go from here to the next step that makes you better, or the next step that makes you better, right? So you're constantly improving in life because we only have one, so you may as well make it count. You know what I mean? And so, I wish the really good teachers would go, I'm worth $40 an hour, but Joe Schmo over here isn't worth $40 an hour, right? And so it's this, and seniority doesn't mean you got better. Right? Seniority just means you got older and grayer.
I think that, and I'm not saying that all of those things are fraught with misintent, but it is very hard when we look at the struggles of being a teacher for the past 18 months. Like, I know the struggles of being a small business owner, of working in residential property management, of, trying to raise 2 children. I can only imagine the challenges that these teachers faced. And it was all during the 2020 election, which was fraught with political
switch off your, not right now, but after this show, switch off your TV.
And the NEA, the National Educators Association, was like, we are going to teach CRT. And you're like, wait, this is the stand that we're taking? We don't want to be in the classroom because you're going to kill us. Okay, that's the extreme. These very extremist stances to cover an umbrella of people, it's just hard for me. I don't believe people belong in huge boxes.
No, again, back to that airplane, right? Like exactly. Where you're like, oh, let's give people more flexibility. More flexibility is more freedom. More freedom is more happiness. More happiness is more better.
And I say the NEA, right? And then the MEA. So our Manchester Educator Association is part of the NEA. So it's not like, oh, Brittany, you're bringing up these national headlines. Like, this is Manchester. These are our schools. And these teachers are wonderful. Listen, you're wonderful. I love you. Thank you so much for what you do. I cannot do it. But to know that, like, you're defined by these extreme statements, and if you feel like that extreme statement does not represent me, how lost are you in this union that is there to represent you?
Right.
And how do you even gain a foothold when the measure is way up here and you you might agree to here. You might agree to here, and you don't. You have to be at this level.
Right. And so that was why some of the legislation and obviously the Janus decision that came out of the Supreme Court that said, hey, how about this? Such an insane notion. How about we say you don't have to be forced to join the union? If the union's doing a great job for you, you will voluntarily join it. But if they're not doing a good job for you, how about you don't actually get forced to pay dues? And honestly, like when I taught in New York City before I moved to New Hampshire, I was forced to join a union. I was forced to get a vaccine. You know, now when people ask me, oh, like what's your position? And again, anti-mandate. Can you spell it? Not anti-vax, anti-mandate.
M-A-N-D-A-T-E.
Like lady date, mandate.
Ooh. Can we be anti-lady dates instead?
What was I saying with the vaccines? I forget. But I had an adverse reaction to a vaccine. So I'm like, okay, that's where I'm coming from. So again, just the flexibility to allow people to do more of what they want. I think part of the reason the entire world seems a little upset and, I mean, you know, I think a lot of that's being fostered through social media, through, you know, all of that, right? This sort of conflict dynamic is a political ploy that pits neighbors against each other. So just to wrap up, because I think we're almost out of time, but you know, at the Health Freedom Rally, what I was talking about is just, you know, we live in the real world and let's stop being so nasty. Let's, you know, go say hi to your neighbors and just be nice.
It's amazing how I sat with, you know, people who were not politically of my ilk and designation at this recount for 5 hours. And it was wonderful. I had Jade, that's who your name was. Amazing. I loved spending time. And people would have us very separated and as totally different, unrelatable humans. So I hope we all enjoyed a nice break when Facebook was down and remembered that we're all humans and your neighbors are wonderful people that you just have to extend a hand out to.
All right. If you want to know how wonderful I am, read my book, The Ecstatic Pessimist, Stories of Hope Mostly. Thank you so much, Brittany, for joining me. Brittany Ping, she is running for office. She's amazing. This is a great lady. Get to know her and support her in all her efforts.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for coming.